Welcome to another episode of The Architecture of Health. I'm Deb Boyson, and my guest this week is author Frank Forencich. He's an expert on the human animal and our predicament in this ever-changing world. He also has a lot of experience with ancestral movement patterns and ancestral health. The author also of his new book, Honor the Animal. Welcome, Frank.
Great to be here. I'm excited to talk.
And Frank is a very special kind of expert because he's all about both inclusiveness and really getting good at moving and being healthy in natural ways. So he's both an expert and he wants everyone out there moving and feeling better. So his unique blend with the ability to bring perspectives back in of how has the human animal existed over the millennia it took us to evolve is what brings us together today, because he has a point of view that will stand the test of time. So Frank, and guys, I got first introduced to Frank's work when I learned these interactive partner games for movement that were also very adaptive and teaching strength in an adaptive way I had never found, in a very engaging way I'd never found. His first book, Exuberant Animal, was a breakthrough in the way I thought about movement and health and community. And that's why I reached out to him originally. So Frank, thanks for all your hard work. Thanks. You're going upstream in a world that wants six-pack abs and to be a fitness influencer looking all sweaty and hot. You're swimming upstream and I'm here with you. So tell me why this book now, Honor the Animal.
Well, people say, how long have you been working on the book? And I'd have to say pretty much my whole life. So probably the last 50 years, ever since I got involved in martial arts and wanted to be a martial art teacher and thinking about how to do that well. And then studying human biology in college and going to Africa, all of that. But the most recent motivator for this was I had a great friend who was a personal trainer and my climbing partner. And we would go on these adventures. And so we would have these long car drives and these long hikes up to the mountain. And he would always be talking about how he was going to work with his clients and how he was going to design experiences for his clients. Well, I'd take him out for a bike ride, and then I would do this, and then I would feed him this, and then we would rest, and then we'd do. And so after a few of these excursions, I started to realize what he was doing was designing an experience for his people, and he was doing it from scratch. And that's what led to the book, because I said, okay, this is experiential design, what he's doing, and I really want to check this out. So that was my whole motivation of starting from scratch.
And guys, when I got this book, Frank was so generous to send me a copy. I was thrilled. You know, the name of the show is The Architecture of Health. Health is a design project, it's
Mm-hmm.
creating an ecology for being well. And when I saw this perspective of adding this layer of intentionality to designing experiences, I immediately, that doubled, besides, the architecture of our bodies and the architecture of movement, the design of experience is central, I think, to making anything that will last. So tell me, how did you, where did you start in this process and where did you end up?
Well, I guess my trip to Africa was the start of all this because that's what fired my imagination about the human animal. And I had no problem with the biology and the explanation of people as humans, as animals. That made sense to me right from the beginning. And so then it just became a matter of starting from scratch, you might say. And my idea was, okay, let's take a veterinary approach to the human animal and let's get back to the basics of biology. Who are we? What is our history? How do we learn things? What is our relationship with the world? And if you can incorporate those questions into an experiential design, then you're on the right track.
And I love that you're breaking out of the limiting set of cultural beliefs about the present moment and our present chair centric, screen centric, thought centric society. I love that you broke out of the container to take a much bigger look at, and that's, on design shows, like my favorite show as a kid was This Old House, or one of those organizing shows where they take everything
Yeah.
out of the house. They take everything out. They're like, we're going to start fresh. Let's get our new assumptions. And when you get the right design assumptions, the right budget and all that, then the rest that follows. When you get stuck to keeping all of your old ways of thinking and all your old stuff, those constraints will affect whether you're successful. I also, what was it, 25 years ago, I took my first trip to Africa for the same reasons you did. I wanted to see a world where people bent over to do laundry, carried things on their head, carried babies differently,
Mm-hmm.
had languages in the present tense. Language in the present tense. Some of the oldest languages don't have so much reference to the past and the future. So Africa. All right. So these design assumptions about the animal. You said veterinary. When I was helping my son resolve in quote incurable diseases, I used a lot of veterinary people who were able to break out of the medicalization mindset, the modern drug and surgery based mindset. I could go study how a veterinarian took an approach. Their approaches are much more practical. They have to be
Right.
cheap. They have to work for a lot of beings, and they have to account for the human animal. And so, of course, when they were smearing ivermectin during what, I was laughing because I was like, come on, guys, all the animals are fine with that. We're an animal. All right, so tell me, so you've gotten this idea of experience design. You blew the lid open to look across how our animal is designed, and then you started designing some solutions.
Right. And well, my first chapter is about how we relate to the world, because you can't understand how we learn until you set the stage with our relationship. And that means, is the world friendly? That's the question that every animal, every human is asking throughout life. So you have to look at the stress response, because that has a big impact on how we learn. So I dig into the brain, I dig into the neuroscience, and it's it's fascinating to me. You have to create an environment where that animal feels safe, and then you apply the learning challenges on top of that. So that's a ground zero for so many of these things. And then I ask about the neuroscience of learning. How do we learn? What's the role of repetition, and so on. And that those are my two central starting points here.
Agree. And what's out there in the front edge of professional fitness ish stuff is safety first. A lot of doing chilling out, getting the nervous system, vagus nerve, vagal tone reset, safety first, and then stretching. And what I love too about your work is, I know it's near the end of the book in this book, but you introduce the healthy stressors of a supportive partner.
Mm,
Someone is on your side. They want you to get stronger and better, and within that, a partner can titrate the challenge to the
right,
exact level that you need. Okay, great. So how the human learns first is safety, and then learning challenges and repetition, muscle
right.
memory. You've got to do something a lot of times for it to stick.
Right. And we've known this for thousands of years, right? The ancients always knew that you had to put in the time. Yeah, the martial arts people always say it's time on the mat. You got to put in the repetitions. Everybody knows this. But then in the late 20th century, the neuroscience confirmed all of that. We discovered that the nervous system, the changes to the nervous system are all use dependent, which is another way to say they're all driven by experience. So if you want a transformation to the human animal, you have to design the right kind of experience. Experience is the language of the body. And you can talk all you want. It's not going to change anything unless that animal has a different kind of experience. So that's why we have to become experiential designers. The neuroscience is really complex, but It's actually really simple too, because if you want to change a neuron or a synapse, you have to give it a particular kind of use. And when you do that, then it transforms itself. If you don't give it a particular kind of experience and use, then there's not going to be a transformation. So that's where it all begins, is with experience.
And as humans, our superpower is adaptation. We
Mm-hmm.
come underformed so that that giant head can get through the birth canal.
Right.
And then we start hard, not even hard coding. Our wiring starts developing in response to our environment. And the thing that I explain to some of my clients is this is a superpower and a curse. A
Mm-hmm.
cat, when it's born, walks like a cat. A dog, when it's born, walks like a dog. A human walks like whatever they're doing. A human can walk like they're stuck to a chair. They can do our. We can adapt towards longevity or away from longevity, and towards strength or away from strength. So I love that you're reminding us that this is a superpower, and when you use that superpower intentionally in
Mm-hmm.
our design, that's where a lot of great things unfold. So that's the beginning of the book. And then experience is the language of the body. I love how you just said that. So I think you're calling for this type of thinking about experience design to be universal, not to just some compartmentalized way of, oh, go exercise this way.
Right. And this whole thing dovetails with the world of therapy and counseling, because I would point to a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And it's a great book. And he sees three ways to heal the body and heal the person, the organism. The first one is talk therapy, and that has certain usefulness, I suppose. And then the second one is biomedical with different, pharmaceutical interventions. And the third one is what he calls the bottom up approach. And the bottom up approach is experiential. And that means giving the body the kind of experiences that contradict the trauma that they experienced early in life. And so what you're trying to do is make a case to the body via experience to prove to the body that the world is actually a friendly place. And that's 100% experiential. And this is what the therapy community is starting to understand, that these somatic approaches are so valuable. And the movement arts, all of this plays into that.
I am aligned with that. There's a great book I'm reading called Survival of the Friendliest.
Oh, nice.
And the research shows uh, the high levels of collaboration are really not only our ability to adapt, our ability to collaborate is truly what's unique in the animal kingdom. Even chimps and apes cannot collaborate the way dogs actually have more ability to collaborate with humans than chimps and apes have to collaborate with each other. It's a great book. And I mean, one of the books I read of yours that I loved was called Play as Though Your Life Depends Upon It. And
Right.
we've accidentally pedestalized aggressive and competitive athletic feats. And there's a plus and a minus to it, right?
Right.
Like, it's beautiful that those teams train and all the audience, we're all entrained, getting this feeling of invigoration watching it. But then the fact that there's that separation, that you feel like you have to kill yourself to deserve to be a mover, is
Right.
the downside.
Some people have described that as like a capitalist value system, where the only way you can be validated is to produce some high level, extraordinary achievement. And there's big consequences to that worldview, and they're not good.
That's one reason in West Africa, I tell my students about this all the time. I remember because I've been training and training, doing my choreography. I had a group, I was getting in the circle to do my dance, hundreds of people pushing in around. And I'm just in my head thinking way too much, being way too fancy. And they're kind of looking at me funny. Then someone I was traveling with got in the middle of the group and did one move like that. And they went crazy because it was so authentic. And then the 80-year-old woman the overweight 80-year-old woman comes in and does her special brand. Then the acrobat comes in. Everybody's doing their own level with authenticity. And it doesn't have to be something fancy. In fact, they didn't like my trying way too hard to do something. So let's go back to, so your book, you talk about this is for teachers, coaches, trainers, therapists, parents, and health professionals. So what got you to finally, like, let's put this into a book? Like, you thought of this a long time ago, you're in the car, you've done all this research and writing for many years. And then why now is the time to write this down in this format?
Right. Well, one of the drivers here, I guess, is just my frustration, my angst about our ecological predicament and our, the threats to the biosphere, the threats to democracy, and now even the threats to our humanity. All of that is this huge challenge facing me and everyone. And I said, I have to do something. This is something that I can do. It's a small step towards taking care of the human animal, and that's my contribution to this. And it's a way to take action in the world as opposed to just falling back into despair. And any kind of action that I can take, I'm going to do. So the book is my counter argument, you might say, to the state of the modern world.
And you have this analogy in the book about a bowl with balls in it. If it's upside down and there's just a ball at the top that might at any moment fall off, versus a bowl where the balls have, I mean, I think part of what you're describing is that there is more uncertainty and instability that we can feel that creates automatically a kind of unhealthy stress, let alone our physical ancestry and how we're designed to be outside and walk and move and not stare at computers. But this other level of, we hear about what's happening in the world, but it's so confusing and so polarized and so capitalized and manipulated. I do love that that's the purpose of this book, is to bring us together and start by us being together in our bodies, our together. So tell me, can you talk a little bit more about that analogy in the book with the
Right.
bowl and the
The
balls?
ball and the bowl, that's something I borrowed from the world of mechanical engineering and system science and such, where it's all about stability. And the metaphor is all about our psychology and even our spirit and how we feel in the world. So if you are a ball in a bowl, you feel pretty good because you can make mistakes, you can go and have an adventure, you can have problems, anything, but the bowl will support you. And the bowl is your community or a certain set of ideas and structures and systems that will support you if something goes wrong. And so you feel good and your body works better in that condition. But if you turn that bowl upside down and you put the ball on top, now you have a case of negative stability. And how does that feel? Well, it feels really tenuous and really sketchy because you feel like if you make an error or you go on an adventure and you take a wrong turn, something goes wrong, there's nothing there to support you, and you're going to fall off the side of the bowl. So that a lot of people are living in that condition now of negative psychological stability. And we need to rebuild those supporting structures to take care of the human animal. And that tells us a lot about our politics and, of course, our economics and everything else, how we organize ourselves.
And that comes back to how you're defining in this book many ways to make that safe container. You talk a fair bit about embodied cognition. I was writing, let's see, what was it? 30 years ago, I was writing a paper saying this top down idea of intelligence is wrong. I was like, this is wrong. It's bottom up. It's bottom up. And I was at a, vegetarian organic collective, and I was doing contact improv, and I was riding my bike, and I realized how correct that idea was. And like, we sometimes sneer at dinosaurs, like they had a pea-sized brain. Well, that isn't the only part of you that works. That's not the only part of you that matters, is the intellectual. It's also the embodied. Anything you want to say about why you brought that
Oh,
into
yeah,
this?
yeah, very much so, because the way I describe our current state of thinking about the body is that we're still suffering from this Cartesian hangover. And people will remember Rene Descartes and his distinction between mind and body, but we forget how influential that guy was. So this Cartesian approach, this Newtonian approach to the body, seeing the brain as the command and control center for the whole body, and the body as nothing more than a locomotor device for the head. The brain is smart and the body is dumb. That those assumptions still rule the day, and they're still all over the modern university. And we still honor the brain and people who study the brain and people who think abstract thoughts above the people who work with the body. And this Cartesian hangover is really destructive, because in fact, the brain is just a subset of the body. And no matter how amazing it is, it's still in constant dialogue with the body. The body is always speaking to the brain just as much as the brain speaking to the body. So to amputate the body as we do is a really bad move. This is my pushback to that.
Yeah, and I heard somewhere that the only reason we have a brain is because we move. One example in the animal kingdom is some kind of sea life. I don't know if it's a moss or an
Oh,
anemone or
right. I
something.
know what you're
And
talking
yeah,
about.
it
Yeah.
it it
Yeah.
has a brain while it's moving around to find its permanent home. And then once it plants itself, it eats its own brain because it doesn't need a brain if you're not moving. So
Right.
the atrophy of our brains and our common sense, when we have gotten again too obsessed with this one model, this Descartes model that is underneath so many things. And honestly, too, guys, in the world of healing, being in a crowdsourced medicine group of 10,000 people that was almost banned from Facebook, to be honest, where we were all in the field figuring things out, comparing experiments. Citizen scientists can do a lot more. Millions of citizen scientists can do a lot more than one expert who only has their lifetime to
Mhm.
research in a very narrow way. So tell me, what did you find as far as defining this inviting container that brings the whole body, embodied cognition, it brings safety? Tell me more ingredients that now, if we move towards, wow, I'm a therapist, I'm a movement instructor, maybe I'm a facilitator, what does this thing start to look like that honors the animal?
Right. Well, I have a chapter called Models, and I draw on three primary models just because those are the ones that I'm familiar with. And the first one is athletic training. And that's a great model. Athletic coaches get great results, and compared to the rest of our training that we do with people around the world, it's some of the most effective that we have. And we don't listen to coaches enough. We should bring coaches, we should give them more of a platform than they already do. And by the same token, athletic coaches should be more vocal about how we work with the human animal, because they know how to do it. The second model is the martial art model, and that's also a very effective, powerful model. And there's less to be said about that, but their emphasis on focus and on the dojo rules, the discipline that's involved, all of these things contribute to human learning in a very profound way. And the final one, as we've talked about, is the African drum and dance model, which is I'm just delighted to have discovered this, because it's a great model of experiential design and community building and skill building, all of those things together. It's phenomenal. So for a coach or a therapist or a teacher, somebody who wants to start a program from scratch, you can draw on all three of these models.
What I like about all three of them is they're, even though they're not going to exclude people for messing up. In fact, messing up and making mistakes in safe environments is the way we get better. They all have some idea that there is a right way. Like there's some measurable, like, okay, we're going to win the game, or we lost the game. We made an error. You're on the beat, you're off of the beat, you're too slow.
Mhm.
You're, and martial arts, this way will prevent you from getting hurt. This is a destructive move. This is a constructive move. I think what has happened in some of the attempts to make people feel safe, I think there's been a little bit of delusion in some cases of like, I mean, to a certain extent, and it's a funny balance. What I like is you address these complex issues in your book as like, how do you lead while giving everyone room to step up. But I also like the idea that there are inherent uh goals here. There's some kind of goal. Like, look, when I talk to people and they're like, oh, I injured my knee or whatever, I'm like, yeah, you the physical therapist will help you for the next month or two. you know that'll get you out of pain, probably, possibly. I was like, but if your goal, let's look at your 50-year goal. Like, because what do you want to do in 50 years? Let's design towards that outcome. And the nice thing about these older arts is they're passing along what the human animal has always needed, and it doesn't always want a participation trophy for just showing up. I mean, can you say anything about that delicate
Right.
balance
Well,
of performance and inclusiveness?
right. The other rhythm that's related to that is this rhythm between freedom and discipline. And that's in educational circles and training circles, that's always been a big debate. But you don't need to debate it because there's room for both of these things. And the discipline is absolutely essential. In all of these arts and in human movement, there are right ways and wrong ways to move. There are right ways and wrong ways to strike the drum, for example. There are right ways and wrong ways to play music. But then there also needs to be a period of play and freedom. And so this goes right into experiential design because you look at the time you have with people and you say, okay, there's going to be a period of discipline. We're going to be really focused during that period. Then there's also going to be a period of play and freedom. And you alternate back and forth between those depending on how much time you have. And that's what that's how people learn the best. And the problem is that we get stuck in one phase or the other. So different trainers and coaches may have a preference. They might say, well, I'm a disciplinarian and that's all they do. Or somebody say, well, my program is play-based and that's all I do. But you've got to have both. You've got to have the discipline and the freedom.
I was just sharing with a great movement teacher the other day that we were kind of talking about our movement histories. And I was like, yeah, I did contact improv till I tore my psoas. But when I was doing my martial arts training along with my contact improv is very play,
Mm-hmm.
all play. And then I was doing my martial arts, which was katas and forms and drills. When I was doing those together, I didn't get any injuries. But the second I let go of that base, bam, major injuries. And I look here. What I love is there's also a graphic in Frank's book about a kind of a pie model for how would you design an experience and have different put the right ingredients in the pot, and where you're stretching here outside of the strict container of, oh, because right away as a movement person, I jump to like, oh, I'm going to a class in a studio. I'm in a 1 hour class in a studio, or I'm with a practice group where we rehearse an hour or two. But you've included things like food, presentation sharing. You've included a cycle that it seems to be a cycle that it could apply to experience design of many different kinds of, especially non-movement centric events. You want to talk about that pie you made?
Right. When I first started doing workshops, this is what I was up against because I wasn't constrained by anybody's template. I wasn't constrained by any boilerplate. I said, okay, I'm bringing these people in and I want them to have a holistic, a comprehensive experience. And it's going to include lots of movement, lots of martial art team building. But I also want to talk. I want to talk about health and human evolution and all the rest. So, how do I integrate those together? And by offering a little bit of each of those experiences in a cycle that repeats over the course of a weekend, for example, people are really excited about that because the movement gets people energized. They're sweating a little bit. They're doing work with one another. They're building relationships. And then we may sit down, maybe have a snack. Then we do a presentation. So it gets their brains engaged on the material. And all of that can be adapted for other purposes, other teachers in different settings. And that's what I've tried to do.
I love it too because I got your book and started reading it just before I went to two or three different immersive experiences. One of them was up near your neck of the woods. We did a primal movement regenerative agriculture reset where we would do our movement recodes, then we would go pick food, and then we would sit down and eat the food.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that this is a if more of these connected experiences will help more people feel safe and build towards longevity in many ways. And imagine I can't, oh, okay. When I was at tech companies on design teams, sometimes I would hire an improv theater coach to come in and get people to do game-based team building. So this is another component of your book, which overlaps a little bit with your workbook for the exuberant animal is you've curated a set of partner rules and modalities, like specific games to play. I think games are so great because they bring your whole self together, and partner a healthy resistance, whether they're a heckler or a helper, is an ingredient. So you want to talk about any of these specific movement tools, these strategies that you list in the book?
Right. Well, there's a lot of information out there about how to move, and there's guidance for individual solo fitness movement, and that's all fine and good. But for me, the most exciting things are when you get people moving together. And there's two games that I really love. The first one's called Sidewalk Dilemma. And this is simply you set people up across the room or across a field from one another, and you have them walk towards one another just as if they were on an actual sidewalk. Okay, so everybody can relate to this. And then you walk towards one another and you make a graceful pass. That's it. All you have to do is read the other person's body to see whether they're going to go left or right. And then you make a choice to go left or right, and you try not to collide with the person. And at first it's really easy, and then you up the intensity. So you go a little bit faster, you start closer to one another, and then you get better at reading their movement and being sensitive to their posture and so forth. It's fantastic. And it's super easy, and anybody can teach it, and it's delightful. Every now and then somebody will crash into their partner, and that's okay too. You bounce off and you keep moving.
So that's one of two. I want to
Right.
pause on this one. Every time I see people lined up, I want to play Red Rover. I'm like, Red, but if someone would get hurt. Remember when we were kids, we would just cannonball, like bust through the other team's arms. Someone's down on the cement with their knee scraped. So I like this version, much more tame. We use it a little in improv theater sometimes as well. Like you
Right.
pass each other. But I was going to add in my Haitian dance teacher makes our lines pass through each other. And at
Mm-hmm.
first, nobody wants to do it. Everybody's like, no, I'm going to hit someone. And he's like, no, 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 you can do it. You can do it. And that cohesion of our group, because we're getting so much closer to each other and we're
Nice,
interacting with
nice.
each other, is there. So what's the second one that sticks out to you as far as a really simple but a powerful game?
This one's called animal magnetism. And the idea is very simple. You simply make contact with another person, typically at the wrist. So the wrists are crossed like this in a martial art kind of relationship. And the rule is just stay sticky. So maintain contact with your partner no matter where they move. And you start out slow and your partner moves somewhere, and then you feel their body and you move in that direction, maintaining the contact. And it doesn't sound like much, but that's where all the martial arts stuff begins. that's where you learn to be sensitive to another person. And then you can intensify all of that, because you can designate one person as a coach and the other person as an athlete to follow along. You can make particular kinds of movements. You can be sticky at the wrist, or you can be sticky at the shoulder. You can be sticky at the hip. It doesn't matter. And then you can add in heckling as well. So now you put people on one foot and you ask them to kind of heckle somebody, and that challenges stability. So all of these things are easy and fun and extremely sensory. And that's a good place to begin.
And I love that you've used the word stability several times. And I remember being struck by the idea that you need a certain amount of instability to have stability. When you
Mm-hmm.
think about how we primarily our primary movement task, other than breathing, is walking forward through space primarily,
Mm-hmm.
along with another short list of things. And that's a mostly one-legged activity. We're on
Right.
one leg all the way, we're on the other leg all the way. And it's when we lose that dynamism in our movement that we become that highest risk for a crash. So I love the idea of using a certain amount. And at the same time, people have gone too far where I've seen a lot of the kind of elite athletic trainers doing crazy unstable things.
Right, right.
When you skip safety, you skip the making things safe and calming the nervous system. If you skip that and are thinking that you can make deep changes just by being unstable, that's also not true. That I remember when I was doing the most instability training ever, my deepest rooted negative postural habits got deeper and deeper and deeper rooted. and
Hmm.
and then when I backed off and I started to do like first chill, do the diaphragmatic breathing, have grounded foot contacts, have expansive blah blah blah, then my deepest rooted patterns could change. And then when I went back to upping the ante, I could have these patterns, these new patterns that stuck. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
stability and instability both.
Right.
Now, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I agree completely. I think that the stability training is essential and important, but we also go too far with it. Yeah, with the Bosu ball and all the really exaggerated trainings that we do for that. A friend of mine who's a physical therapist, he calls them circus tricks, because you go so far in that direction, it doesn't become relevant anymore. And it might be fun to do and it might be impressive to do, but we have to stick to the basics, I think.
And I love the word circus tricks, because if something gets you injured, now this is a fine balance. Of course, we want to move. I love that you point that out. Like almost any movement is fine. Most movement is fine. I think the risk is when you get into those circus tricks and you're actually performative and you want to be seen and you're trying harder and harder. I think the risk of injury is much higher. And like one lovely thing I did learn from one of my mentors was the healthiest shapes, positions, whether they're even resting positions or the healthiest the healthiest positions and movements have the most options from them. When you get
Mhm.
into some extreme wound up, bound up, odd thing, you have fewer and fewer options from there. So therefore, by design, it's less safe and
Right.
has less longevity. So that because we need the ability to adapt. So the one thing I like, this quote you put in here from Paulo Coelho. He wrote The Alchemist. How do you say it?
Yeah, yeah.
Coelho. He
Yeah, I don't
The
know.
world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. I love that you're, and Frank, when we first met a couple of years ago, I remember saying, I found you. Like, because of you, I got my friends together in the park and I led park play dates where we used your games, and we did that all through COVID. And it was like what got me through so much stuff is like I felt empowered to just get some friends together and go play in the park. Oh my God, we got so strong. We were hanging off the monkey bars and playing games like we were fake killing each other and falling down and pushing each other around. And the kids would look at us like, wow, who are these people? And I'm going to go back to that at some point. But I wanted to say, I love that you're saying, come on, guys, let's not fall into this legalistic, professional, medicalized idea that you need to be or have some kind of complete expert to have an excuse to move. But what I do think is having someone who can facilitate, I do think helps a lot, where because there's a lot of solo fitness going on. You have your own yoga practice, you go to the gym and you do your own functional weight training, or you maybe have a personal trainer. There's a lot of that feels like it's what's happening. And yet what gets me going the best is I have a great teacher. I go to my African dance class. We've got this incredible 8 drummers. We've got the 20 of us dancers, the energy in the room. Whoa. And we've got a skilled facilitator. She keeps us like beautiful mover, just beautiful mover. So anything you want to say about striking that balance between facilitation, professionalism, and just getting out there and playing around with friends?
Right. Well, all these kinds of conversations remind me of one of my trips to Africa, where I went to Gombe in Tanzania, which is where Jane Goodall did her work with the chimpanzees. And when you go there, you go out in the forest and you see the chimps, and there aren't any coaches or trainers or experts or professionals, but these chimps are incredible animals, and they're learning to move simply by living in the forest, playing, hunting, and doing basic things. And I think we go overboard with our expert instruction. And that's something where I think average people learning about their bodies can be influential and inspirational for one another. And we're too afraid of the legalisms. We're too afraid of getting sued, and so we feel like we have to fit in a certain template, and that inhibits everything. So I'd say take a chance.
And the big part that's assumed there, but it's not stated, is like you're talking about, they're in this movement context. The chimps are with each other. They're in the jungle. They're doing basic things. And what's assumed is this whole lifestyle. Like, and what I find is tricky is we don't even realize we've grown up leaning on chairs and having a world designed at chair height. Our car is chair height. The window is chair height. And then how much of us is designed around a lot of movement constraints. So I met a coach a couple of months ago who oh no, he was on my podcast. Yeah, he was on my podcast 2 or 3 episodes ago, and he said he once had a business called The Other 23. It was a gym where he was mostly, when people would come in, he's getting them to think about the other 23 hours of the day to kind of open up the designer's ability to see, well, who am I imitating? What is my child seeing when I'm sitting here on my phone all the time, and then I'm not even cleaning my own house, or I'm not walking anywhere, I'm driving anywhere? So I would say that we're learning by osmosis. That's what, well, and when I studied a lot with Esther Gokhale in Palo Alto, she spent a lot of time in Africa, and Jean Couch, she's in Palo Alto too, and they were both kind of like, well, if you can't practice this all the time, because it was primal posture, if you can't like practice this all the time with a lot of help, then go live in a village where they don't have furniture. Just move to Portugal, by where the people are still barefoot unloading the fish boats and then carrying things on their head. And that's one reason I was like, well, best I can do is, that's what got me to West African dance. I'm like, well, best I can do is find someone whose movement context was so much richer than mine growing up, so that they can bring me closer to my full possibility. And that those teachers mostly teach by imitation. They show, and then you just have to figure it out. And that's off, like beginners come in and cry, I can't, like they come in, and the rest of us who've come for 20 years, like, just give yourself a little time. Like you're gonna eventually figure this out. So part of this is what example are we being for whom? And then who is our example? And then the answer is probably some kind of container, so that we collect more of this support for each other who are leading back to ourselves.
Yeah, ideally, if our environment was natural and normal, we wouldn't need to teach anybody anything about movement. But as you say, people are coming to us with a huge amount of sensory motor amnesia. They've forgotten how to move because they're constrained by this abnormal environment that we live in. And so, yeah, then you can make a case for a little bit of expertise and leadership and instruction in how to move normally. So, yeah, there is a place for the coach and the trainer and so on. I have a friend who is a personal trainer, and he takes this really seriously. He says, my primary goal is to get rid of my clients.
that
And when he told me that, and I was just blown away. I was going, okay, this is a person I can relate to, because he said, my goal here is to give my people the tools and the ideas and the experiences that they need so that they can go out and function in the world. If they keep coming back to me over and over again, that means I've failed as a teacher. And I'm just going, okay, this guy is he's on the right track.
I love that. I've told people I have the worst business model in the world because I want you to not be dependent on me. As a joke, I called myself an impersonal trainer, and because I was like, no, I want you to do it. But what I found is on the other side, when the cultural pressures we're pushing back against do require support in a way, and that's one reason I'm so attracted to your book. Is like, let's design that support. Yes, I'm empowering people, I'm giving them tools, and they could go away and be, fit at a level they've never been before with honestly some very simple things. But it's actually it's simple, but it's not easy because of the gravitas, the pulling to not be this new old way, like this new. Oh, well, I think one of your book, what was
They
it?
call the new old way. Yeah,
It
yeah.
was called the new old way. That is so funny. And you talked about this sensory amnesia, right?
Right, right.
Look, I said, look, I'm tapping my, okay. So our eyes, even when we wear glasses, they get this a sensory amnesia of the world outside of this, this frame. And then we've got this world that's this close. And it's funny, you could go, well, Deb, you need to go to the eye doctor and get stronger and stronger glasses. And then we could say, yeah, that's another $1,000, $2,000. I got to do it every year. Da 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 da. Versus having the nerve and the willpower to do the boring eye exercises. Oh my God. And to go see awe-inspiring vistas where you
There it is. Yeah, yeah,
stretch your imagination. And that's, Frank, I think that might be where we start to wrap up, is awe-inspiring vistas, stretching the imagination, being in wonder at the history and the capacity of all that could be, versus this microscopic, unstable, fearful, isolated self. Anything you want to say that will just might bring the listeners one step closer to feeling empowered, connected, and that sense of wonder of how good things could be?
right. What you speak of with the eyes is some people have called this the myopia epidemic, and it's a literal true thing that prescriptions for myopia have been increasing around the world. And obviously, we're spending too much time on our devices. So the antidote then is to have more of a big picture view and actually go out and look at actual panoramas and use our eyes to look at bigger pictures. And so that's a physical thing, but it's also a spiritual thing. And we that sense of awe and wonder and imagination, that was a part of our history until very recently. I mean, growing up living on the grassland, you would have been in awe every day. You would have been seeing things out on the savannah. You would have seen thunderstorms and lightning and all kinds of natural wonder every day. Awe is a form of medicine. And we are, as animals, we're wired to live in that world. So seek those things out and they're very nourishing.
Lovely, Frank, talking to you. Let's help people get closer to this wisdom. You've consolidated a lot of your research into one useful resource here. Honor the animal. Your websites, let's go through those. I'll put them in the show notes too. Exuberantanimal.com is one of your websites, right?
Right. It's also linked. You could type in honortheanimal.earth and it would get you there as well. If you look up honor the animal, you'll find it. So
And you also have some YouTube channels, right?
right. I have a YouTube channel with some monologues that I do about the state of the animal, state of the world, that kind of thing. And that's pretty easy to find. If you do honor the animal on YouTube, you should be able to find it. So
Okay, well, this has been fabulous. And thank you for your pioneering work, being the champion of the ordinary and connected world that we are building together.
well, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. I always enjoy it.
Thanks, Frank.